All right. Hey, everybody. Jared Napolitano, JNAP, also known as Marketing Advocate for the Star Wars CCG Players Committee here. I'm going to do a stream of How to Play Star Wars CCG Part 2. A few months ago, back in November, I did a Part 1, which is available on the PC's YouTube page, which you can see here. You would just go to Playlist in the middle of the screen. And then there's a Tutorials, I believe. And that should be in here. Yeah, it's at the bottom. How to Play Star Wars CCG Part 1. So that's just some context in case you're interested in seeing kind of Part 1, where I lay out what I'm trying to accomplish here, what are some resources, how I would approach learning this beautiful but complex game that is the Star Wars customizable card game. So I'd recommend checking that out if you're truly learning how to play. In that video, I talk a little bit about this all of the Jedi format of Star Wars CCG, which is to simulate like a sealed type environment, or something like, hey, I just found a bunch of cards in my attic and I want to learn how to play. That's what this format does. So what my plan here for Part 2 is going to be is reviewing some games that I played on GEMP, or also play.starwarsccg.org. That is the online, or the preeminent online platform. There is another medium called Holotable that you can play on, but it's not as good in a lot of ways. It has its uses and purposes, and some people prefer that, but GEMP is rules enforced and just has a ton of functionality that's really helpful to people learning how to play the game and want to do a lot of different formats. So again, that's play.starwarsccg.org. That's where I'll be using for these replays. And we can dive in. So what I have here are 8 different games. I don't know if we're going to get through all 8. Maybe we'll get through 1 or 2. Maybe we'll get through 4. Kind of tough to gauge exactly how long it'll make sense to spend on these. But might do the rest of them in a Part 3. Also, just fair warning, I might have to drop for a reason, in which case I'll just splice the videos kind of together after the fact and upload them to YouTube. But here we have the GEMP lobby, and we have some of these videos, or the replays, I should say, queued up. And these are for the Coruscant, which is a league of players in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. We generally know each other, but we do some online events. We try to do more in real life events coming up now that we're hopefully at the tail end of this pandemic that has limited in-person play a lot more. So as I talked about in the first episode, I'd recommend reading the beginner's rulebook, which starwarsccg.org/rules. There's a beginner's rulebook that kind of goes through the phases of the game and what a lot of the icons mean. And I apologize if there's some things I kind of take for granted, or some acronyms. I'm going to do my best not to use kind of shorthand or acronyms to describe things. But I think what I'll do is I'll post these links, these replay links, which you just copy paste in your browser, click play, and you can watch, which will enable people to take a little more slow, and they can pause the replay. You can shift click on a computer to zoom in on each card, see exactly what the game text does, or on a tablet you can just swipe up on like an iPad, and that'll show you the zoom in and what everything does. So that'll be kind of the approach here. We're a couple minutes in. I have these loaded up. So these are against kind of different players in our league. I'll start with this. So this is against Lost to me, I guess is how it's pronounced, but this is Tom. Tom has been in our league the last couple of years. So when I just load the URL, this will pop up. I can just hit play. One of the unique aspects of this sealed format, it's 40 cards per deck, whereas typical open constructed is 60. This is 40. There's also this interesting rule for GEMP, which allows you to put out, we'll say, instead to use the shorthand terms, basically to put out a location. So there's a couple different tweaks to the format and with the game that just try to make it more plausible to have usable decks, because it is possible that even though the format is here's 2 packs from every expansion, it is possible you don't get like a starting interrupt, which are kind of critical to have like a balanced game. So this download, this arrow facing downward in the middle of the screen, that means basically you can put out you have easier access, more certain access to a location. So we'll hit play. We have each player chooses a starting location. Again, this is in the beginner's rulebook. I have a starting interrupt called Careful Planning. My opponent has Prepared Defenses, which allows him to start with certain effects on the table. I have Careful Planning, which allows me to put another battleground site out related to my starting location. So this is just a way of putting more locations out. And as you know, again, the beginner's rulebook, as I touched upon, force icons on each location. They tell you how much force you can activate each turn. And that is kind of like I was thinking of this the other day, kind of like an analogy of the 6 phases, which are activate, control, deploy, battle, move, draw. It's like activate, I was kind of thinking of like an allowance maybe, or like a budget. When you activate, you're given, let's say you're given your allowance. Okay, you get certain force to use. And then your control phase is kind of, you're taking stock on, let me take a look at my investments, or let me take a look at my portfolio. And then your deploy is you're kind of utilizing or making additional kind of investments or just uses of your money. And then battle, you're kind of, I guess the analogy for that is, I don't really know a good analogy for that, but then you're having move phase, which is kind of just reallocating your resources to make sure they're more balanced. And then draw, you're kind of, I guess, checking your ledger and kind of replenishing a little bit before maybe replenishing your carry around cash, so to speak. And then again, the next turn starts with activate phase. So we have 3 locations starting on the table. I have my opening hand here. I have a couple starships, which are the blue cards. I'm light side, so I'm going second. I drew one of my locations. In this format, the general idea is you get locations, you get noun cards, like these characters, which are white or blue, starships and vehicles. And you kind of just want to deploy your nouns and try to force damage. There's 3, as I talked about in the first video, 3 types of forcing damage and making your opponent lose force. And that's the goal of the game, is to deplete your opponent's force. But you have force strains, which basically means you have nouns at a location that your opponent does not. Battle damage is basically when you have battles and you compare power, and whoever has less power has to, pay up, so to speak. And then also direct damage, which is a little more limited in this type of format, which is more simple. Again, this is all decipher cards only. These are all printed cards. It kind of simulates, again, like a sealed format environment, or I think some other games call it like a draft. And of course, nowadays, Star Wars CCG cards are hard to find sealed, or very expensive. So that's what's cool about Jump, is that you can kind of simulate this sealed format, which would be very costly to do in person. So, and then I have a couple interrupts too, which will have uses. Again, I'll put the links up so you can kind of click on these and see what they do. And I'll try to get into some of the nuances. But again, goal of the game, control locations, force damage, deplete your opponent's life force, go from there. So we have Tom, who uses his once per game. He deploys the Dark Forest on Endor. So he gets a couple icons. He's now activating in the top left here. You can see he has 7, I have 5. You want to strike a balance of, you want to activate a lot of force, but the more icons you're giving your opponent, that also allows them to activate force, and it gives them places to deploy their nouns and try to force damage. So we're not going to get into too much nuance. That accompanies like the open constructed game, which is 10 levels beyond this, but very interesting and rewarding, of course, once if you're a beginner, once you get to that point. So I deploy Mon Calamari from my reserve deck. Again, so I'm putting out a location with 2 icons. Now I can activate 7 force, even though I'm giving my opponent 1. I'm going to deploy another location. This is a good location because it's a force drain +1, which means if I have people here, I can then, on my next turn, say, hey, you have to lose 2 force. Whereas these other locations, my other locations are only force drain 1 locations. So now I'll just draw a couple cards, replenish my hand. It's a game of economics, as I kind of alluded to, Star Wars CCG. You want to maintain this balance of getting cards in your hand so you can do stuff. You want to maintain a board state, meaning you want to make sure you have cards on the table that can then pose threats to your opponent. But you only get so much force you can use each turn. And of course, after a while, your cards that are face down, cards that you can utilize your life force, as that kind of dwindles, you have to start making more decisions, and you have to start understanding risks and trade-offs. Sounds a little intimidating, but a lot of it kind of almost happens implicitly. So Tom's going to put out the Chasm Walkway from Cloud City and Captain Kurgi and an Elite Squadron Stormtrooper. Ideally, with every location that you or your opponent go to, you want to have ability 4. So he's got ability 2 on the Stormtrooper, 2 on Kurgi, so you can draw Battle Destiny, and Battle Destiny adds to your power and adds to your attrition to your opponent. So that's the way of making your opponent lose cards from the location. So you can't just put nouns down and just have them stick. There has to be a trade-off when you have battles of who's got to lose what cards. And that's where deploy and forfeit come in. And again, a lot of that stuff is described more visually and more straightforward in the beginner's rulebook than I could really do justice here. So I have my second turn. I'm going to deploy Padme and Barry to the Tashi station, which really ups my activation. So I just went from like, I guess 9 to 12. Sometimes this with the, so if I click on this, you can see you generate X plus X force here, where X equals power of your highest forfeit character. So Padme is my only character there, so she's my highest by default. She has 3 power and 5 forfeit. So now I get an extra 3 force per turn. But if my opponent occupies this location, I then lose that benefit. So I'm going to put the Bomar Monk out. Again, trying to develop some board state. I'm going to play Big Boomas to make my opponent use a force, which takes away some of his economics. Deploy a Baragwin. So now I have ability 5 here, and I can draw Battle Destiny. Bomar Monk has 4. Putting some help for the Bomar Monk, who only participates in defensive values per his game text. Again, that's something I want to stress, is cards do what they say they do a lot of times. So once you kind of learn the infrastructure of phases to your turn and what deploy, power, forfeit, ability all do, a lot of what happens next is, okay, what does this card tell me it can do? And it'll tell you when certain cards kind of activate their purposes, and you can go from there. So he's going to start his turn. He's going to force drain me for 2 at the Dark Forest, because while I only have 1 icon here, which would normally be the standard, this says if you're Imperial present, force drain +1. So both these characters are Imperials, as it shows in the top left corner of the card. So he forces me to lose 2 force. I have to choose whether to lose that from my hand or from my reserve deck or life force, and I lose Yaxkit, who's an alien, an Ugnaught, and a Blast are both off the top, since I like the cards in my hand. Generally, cards in your hand are more valuable because you have them. You could do stuff with them on your next turn, whereas you might have some valuable cards face down, but by the time you get that card, it might be a little after the fact, and it might not be as much utility to you. So that's where it's a trade-off of, it kind of stinks losing cards blindly. You don't know what they are, but you also don't have quite direct access. So Tom comes down with Prince Shizor, and Ghana Gimort, who is a Gamorrean guard who just featured in the Book of Boba. And Shizor is powerful because even though I have 5 ability here, when typically you need 4, he says opponent needs to have ability 6 or more to draw Battle Destiny. So now I don't get a Battle Destiny. I'm kind of low in power. I only have 4. He's going to fire, which is what all weapons do. The Gamorrean Axe at Baragwin draws a 2. He fails, which is fortunate for me, because if he drew a certain number, again, these are what cards tell you what to do. If you draw a Destiny, which is basically picking the card off the top of your reserve deck and looking at what the number in the top right is, target hit if greater than defense value. So you need to draw 3 because the Baragwin's defense value, which is always its middle box, is ability 2. He needed to draw 3, and it would have hit, which means if hit characters must be lost at the end of the battle. So he only draws a 1. I'm going to play this card, which triggers, as Jump does, and it subtracts 1 from Battle Destiny. It's a neat little card called Changing the Odds. And I end up, despite, that could have been worse, I have to lose 7 cards. So Padme covers 5, and then I lose a couple more. 1 from my hand, the Tatooine system, because I don't think that's going to be necessary. And I lose a starship off the top. And again, beginners might ask, well, why'd you lose that card? Or how do you know you lose that card? And that's just stuff that comes with reps. Again, some of the principles to the game of deploy locations, deploy people to locations, force damage. At some point when there's a lot of locations out, you're making a decision of, I have this Tatooine system location in my hand. Is this really more useful to me than another card like a Y-Wing or a Bravo fighter that could be deployed and could, again, control the site, force damage. That's the goal here. So I'm going to force drain for 2 at the Moisture Farm. So there's a couple things happened here. The Bomar Monk, while on Tatooine, that didn't appear for me. Bomar Monk, while at a site adds force icons to equal them for both sides. So it's 2-1. I have 2 light side icons. Dark side has 1, but he equalizes them, so he adds 1, which also means that's my force drain amount of 2. And then Ghana Gimort has this game text of may lose 1 force to cancel a force drain at an adjacent site. So instead of him losing 2 force, he's just going to lose 1 to cancel my force drain. So it's like a substitute, and he loses a card off the top kick. I'm going to use the Baragwin's text to retrieve or exchange a card to get my blaster back, which is what the Baragwin does. And I'm going to get, I guess not too aggressive here. I just put my Y-Wing at Mon Calamari. One thing about this format is you can play a little more, aggressively because your opponent doesn't have access and you don't have access to every single card ever created. It's kind of what came in your packs, and stronger cards are more rare. So you kind of make some risks or bets that my opponent probably doesn't have, like a Star Destroyer and a Pilot in his hand to come down and beat up on my Y-Wing, which would have a lot more power. And I need to start recovering, we'll call it board state, because right now he's now going to force drain me for 2 and 1, and he was limiting me to 1. So right now he's losing 1. So it's kind of 3-2, but now it's going to be like, I guess, no, before it was 3-1. Now it's 3-2, because I can force him to lose 1 with Ghana to cancel the drain, and I could force drain him 1 in space, whereas he has a force drain of 2 at the Endor site and a force drain of 1 at the Tashi station. I'm going to draw a few more cards. I draw a couple more characters, Hark Seth, a transport, and a landing claw device, which could be helpful. Again, he's going to force damage. So these games are kind of neat because they don't take as long with all the Jedi. They're, I think, 30 or 40-minute timers, whereas open games can be 45, 50-minute timers per side. That is, it's like a chess clock. Real-life games are usually like an hour per round. For sealed, they're probably even shorter because games just typically resolve. So he's going to force drain me for a little bit. And now he's going to move over, put another character down, and move away from the Tashi station. So he's now shutting off my drain. Now he doesn't even have to lose the 1 force to cancel my drain. And he's now forcing drains of 2-1. Our life force count, so our face down cards, I have 19, he has 12. So that's good for me, but he also has 14 cards in hand where I only have 5. So he has, if you count them both, he has 26 cards left. I have 24. I'm about to do 1 damage. So he's up in life force, and he's also forcing 2 damage to my 1. So the way that you would approach this mindset is, okay, I kind of have to change the equation here, change the, trajectory, in order to pull ahead in the race. Because if we just keep doing what we're doing, he's going to win. So I had to play Hark Seth, who's pretty cool in that he allows me to use force to prevent force loss from an adjacent site at a force drain. So I can just use 1 force and prevent him from force draining me for 2 here, or use 2 force so he can't drain me for 2 at the farm. Instead, I use it. So it's less costly, literally, to use force than lose force. But it is a resource constraint. You have to make a decision of, do I want to use my cards instead of doing something else with those cards in my force pile, which is the card that I currently have 3 cards in. My opponent has 11. So Tom's going to drain me for 2 at the moisture farm. I'm going to use Hark Seth's game text to spend 2 to reduce that damage to 0. And then he's going to drain 2 at the dark forest. So now I'm forcing 2 at the entrance cavern to Jabba's palace, 1 at the system, 1 at Tashi. So I'm at 4 to his kind of 2. So now he kind of needs to do something to switch it up, which he has a healthy 13 card hand. Should allow him to do that. I'm kind of doing this thing with the Baragwin where I can lose devices and then retrieve them. So once per turn, if the top card of your lost pile is a weapon, device, or transport vehicle, you may use 1 force to retrieve it. So it's kind of a neat card. This card doesn't even sees play in open constructed format even nowadays. That's a pretty powerful mechanic to just retrieve or exchange to get green cards, devices, or weapons back in your life force. Because in a sense, opponent thinks they're causing damage, but it's kind of washing out. So he comes down with 3 Imperials, initiates battle against my 2 aliens. He's got Major Marquand, Admiral Piet, and an Imperial commander. He draws a 3 for Battle Destiny. Because I have 4 ability there, I also get a Battle Destiny. He has, I guess, 6. Piet's 3. and I'd only draw 1. So that's low. If I drew something higher, that would have been really helpful, because now I need to lose 6. He's got 10 power, I've got 4. He has to lose at least 1 forfeit worth of attrition, since I drew that Battle Destiny. I need to lose 3 from the site, and then I also need to lose a total of 6. So both these characters have forfeit of 3. I could just lose them both, and then that's it. Or I could lose one of them to cover the 3, and then lose 3 more cards from my hand. So I'm going to lose 3 more cards from my hand, Life Force, because I think it's important to keep Harksef on the table, since he's reducing my opponent's drains. And I figure I could just run away on my turn. So go to my turn, activating. I'm going to force damage during my control phase. Force drain 1 at Mon Calamari. I'm going to force drain 1 at Tashi Station. He's got to lose force. I'm at 19 now. He's at 21? 20. So we're actually kind of even, but he's got a little more board state. He's got more characters out. I'm going to deploy this Republic officer and a Hanemthi. Hanemthis are kind of cool because they add to the deploy cost for opponent's male Imperials. So all those 3 characters that he deployed last turn would have cost 2 more force each, which would have definitely prevented him from deploying all 3 of them. It would have just been, at least I'm pretty sure, he might have only been able to deploy 2 of them, which means he battles me. He has to probably lose 1, and then I can fight him back unless he runs away. So it's this kind of anticipation that goes through players as well. You have to kind of anticipate next moves to see, okay, I'll do this, then that happens, then I need to do this, or am I vulnerable if I do that? So it's a matter of balancing all the potential actions. So now I draw a few cards to replenish my hand. A couple of these cards are pretty good. This is my starting interrupt that went in my reserve deck. If he initiates battle, I can play it, activate some force, put the card back in my life force, which is good. And I could track, which is a key thing too, of when you put cards back into your life force, that's a valuable tool, because then you know where it is. You can activate force to get back to it, and you could, in this format, there's not a lot of really good high destiny cards. That's where they're valuable, like this card, Fall the Legend, that I just lost. This is a Destiny 6, which is really high. Only 7 is higher. And you can cycle it or put it back in your life force whenever you want. You just, because it has this game text, search your reserve deck, take 1 Weather Vane into hand. So you play it, you search your reserve deck. You're probably not going to have a Weather Vane in hand, but you're going to have a used interrupt that goes to your used pile, and now you know where that card is. And this will come up in one of the other games. Or even like Destiny 5s are helpful for that as well. But I lose that. I lost all Ben. I'm being cautious here. I didn't want to play, well, I only had 2 force, so I'd rather use the 2 force with Harksef to limit the drain, rather than use my 2 force on It Could Be Worse. If you have to lose force, because there's a liability with It Could Be Worse, knowing that It's Worse is a card that exists, and basically if you play It Could Be Worse and your opponent is It's Worse in this format, you basically lose the game. And I think that happens in one of these games as well. Actually, it might even happen the next turn. I think it was this game against Tom. So yeah, so it's pretty close. He now has 20 force, hand, and life. I have 15. He's getting more characters out. He's blocking my damage, and now I'm only doing 1. He plays Projective Telepathy, which makes me use, it's an interrupt, so you can play it in response to my action. Yeah, and at this point, some people might just concede, just because he's got 2 damage at the Endor site. I only have 1 at Mon Calamari. I'm kind of running out of places to go, or ways to use my life force in a way to kind of change the trajectory. I guess I could have just thrown Dash Rendar at like the Chasm Walkway, but he's got a pretty healthy hand. He probably has 2, 3, 4 characters in there at least. So yeah, he plays. He force drain. Yeah, here we go. So this is how I lose the game. Force drains for 2 at the Dark Forest. I play It Could Be Worse to use 2 to reduce the force loss, and then he plays It's Worse, which says if It Could Be Worse is just played, it is canceled, which means I don't even erase those 2 force, since it cancels the effect of what I just did. And you may use X force to raise the damage against your opponent by X amount. So now he's got 8 cards in his life force, or in his force pile. He can use 8 and force me to lose 8 more on top of the 2 I already owe him because my interrupt was just canceled. And this is probably where I concede. So now I owe him, yeah. So I would have to lose 10 force, and I only have 12 left between hand and life. So that would leave me with 2. And then I basically can't do anything. He's just going to then force drain me at the Endor Forest again. I probably needed to contest that. But this format comes down to a little bit of math of like how quickly can you get cards out, how quickly can you force damage, and that's what all formats kind of are to an extent. But this one more than others because there's only 40 cards face down. Players only have so many cards. Yada yada yada. So that was game 1. We can go to game 2. Hopefully, I'll pick up a little efficiency with these. Like I said, maybe I'll do 2. Maybe I'll do all 8 in this episode. But hopefully, kind of seeing how the game is played. One thing to keep in mind is that these are not the same decks that I built in part 1. That was back in November. That was a league that, the leagues usually have like a 20-day life or shelf life. So even though I built those decks, that league expires. This one started new. This is basically February, the month of February, and there's, between 8 and 12 people in our league. It looks like we're gonna have maybe like around 10 who are active. You can only play each person twice. You can play a maximum of 8 games in this league. Sometimes the All of the Jedi, which I highly recommend on Jump, especially as returning players, to get more familiar with just gameplay. You're not at a deficit in terms of deck construction. Obviously a lot of other opponents, if you play open, they're probably gonna have more experience than you, and they're gonna have fine-tuned decks that have been through a lot of games. Whereas if you join this format, at least your cards are, everyone kind of has some good cards, a lot of bad cards, but it's still, playable. And you go from there. So I'd recommend All of the Jedi, and I could show how we do. Actually, maybe let's do it right now. So in the GIMP lobby, there's this Leagues tab. So once you create an account, which is really simple. Well, first thing, again, I mentioned this, top left corner in the first episode, GEMP operational guide and FAQ. Read that. That's really helpful. Then you have this Leagues tab, and right now you can see that there's an All the Jedi sealed going on. Anyone can join this. I think it only costs 5 GEMP gold. You get 5 a week. And that's just to prevent people from just joining with like 8 different accounts and then opening all their packs and then being like, okay, this is my best pulls. This is my account with the best, and play that. So Batmouse smartly puts on some type of constraint to make sure people just don't join. But a lot of other leagues are like, the sealed I think are all 5, but like open leagues like this are only like 5 cents, and they're easy to join because you don't have that sealed consideration. So like in this, for example, we have a couple people that have played 20 games, some good players who are 17-3, 17-2, and then you have some players that might be a little more new, like 0-7. That's okay. It's a complex game. I like to think I learn something new in basically every single game, especially given how many cards there are, how many interactions that happen. So that's what I would recommend. So my opponent, again, he has the same starting interrupt. This is against Scott, Advocate, the lead Advocate. He has prepared defenses, and he just activates and draws. So he's got a couple starting cards, which are kind of cool. I did the same thing I did in game 1, where I played the Moisture Farm and Tashi Station. He has Defensive Fire, which is actually a really annoying card back in older formats when there's no real counter to it. It's not like super powerful, but it can be annoying in that they randomly select one card from my hand and place it in my use pile, so it just takes away one of my cards. It's a Destiny 3 used Interrupt. Drawing a Destiny 3 isn't too bad in this format, because very few cards have immunity to attrition less than 4 or more, which is basically a way of them not losing characters out of sight, even though you might think they have to. So I think I forgot to download my location, so I asked for a revert. Of course, Scott gave it to me. I deployed Mon Calamari again from my reserve deck to get some force going. I'm going to deploy Tatooine to do the same, and I think this game I lost, actually. I'm not sure. I deploy a Y-Wing, only costs 1 force. I guess I play this one aggressive. And I deploy Rick O'Lee, who costs 3 force, and he's 3 ability with the permanent pilot on the Y-Wing of 1. I would draw Battle Destiny, which is key, because then it makes sure that my opponent's going to lose a card as well. Scott's got a pretty good pull of Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, probably one of the best cards you can get in this format if you pull it from a pack from Special Edition, or perhaps one of the Reflections packs. He's going to deploy Bespin, and now he's threatening a drain of 2 at my Moisture Farm. I'm only threatening a drain of 1 at Tatooine. He's got Wipe Them Out, which allows him to activate a force if he occupies a battleground site. So that helps him activate cards without... He lost Flagship Executor off the top of his reserve deck, and then he's going to lose this card called Leave Them to Me, which says at any time you may place effect out of play to retrieve 1 force. So he just lost the Executor. He's like, hey, I want that card back from my lost pile, so he loses the effect. So it's an interesting card to play in this format because because you can, if you have a key card that you lose, you can then get it right back, but it's basically you're trading one card for one card. So it's not like super powerful, but it can be kind of nifty. So I now go with Luminous to Bespin, and that allows me then to threaten a drain of 2 at Bespin. And with Biggs Darklighter, blast at Biggs, which I do get a Battle Destiny. So the key is always try to get 4 ability at a site. This has a permanent pilot with ability of 2. Biggs has ability 2. So now I have a power 3 and a Battle Destiny. Unless, like I said, there's always caveats because certain cards do stuff, and then I forget where I saw it written, but like all there's the rules and the structure to the game, and then there's a bunch of cards which add intrigue to the game that kind of break the rules. So we'll kind of see a few of them, and Zuckuss and Mist Hunter is one that does that, where instead of hey, I get my Battle Destiny with 4, you could draw your Battle Destiny against Zuckuss and Mist Hunter, which is a Darkside Starship, but it gets reduced to 0 unless you have ability greater than 6 piloting. So he's going to force drain me for 2. I lose Changing the Odds, Destiny 5 Interrupt, and a Theed Palace. Call him a scrub. Basic characters like Power 2, Ability 2, deploy, cheap deploy, just normal effects, normal Destiny, not effects, normal stats, but decent forfeit, like 4 or 5. I call them like numpties. They're just like numpties or scrubs, and they're just like, characters that are kind of good. So now Scott comes down with Boba Fett and Slave 1, which is a pretty good combination to go with his Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. He's going to get a Battle Destiny of 1. This is a really strong thing in this format in that his Slave 1 has immunity to attrition less than 5 if Boba Fett piloting. So that means I need to draw a Destiny of a 5 to make him lose anything from the location. And in this format, there's not a lot of 5s or 6s. Like, if you have a 5 or 6 that you can cycle, like I described in the first game, that's a really powerful tool, but it's not super common. And I draw it to Hnemthi, which means he doesn't have to lose anything. I have to lose something. My ship has no immunity to attrition, so I need to lose my pilot, Biggs, who covers all the battle damage too. Since he had 10 to my 5, I need to give him 5 force in the form of forfeit or life force. So now Scott's kind of up on board state, and I think up a little bit in life force. I'm going to force drain him for 1 at Tatooine, and I'm going to put down Hark Seth, who, just like the first game, he can then cap this, or he can reduce the force loss, put it that way. I'm going to put him with Lando from Cloud City. I'm going to run away, and I play it pretty conservatively where I moved to Tatooine. I could have possibly moved to Mon Calamari, but, and possibly threaten a drain of 1, but if he's got another ship in his hand, and I'm just power, 1 with no Battle Destiny, that would be bad. I'd just possibly lose and possibly get overflowed. He force drains me at Bespin. I lose Captain Tarples off the top from episode 1. I'm going to reduce this drain using Hark Seth's text. And Scott comes down with the Womp Rat. And this is a creature, which is the creatures have their own set of rules. They're not really common in modern Star Wars CCG, but they're kind of neat in these formats. So they attack, they don't battle, and they randomly pick on the owner's turn. They're going to randomly pick a card. He draws so he picked on Hark. If he draws a 3, that means he has more ferocity or whatever, and Hark would die, which would be bad for me. But he draws a 0. Drawing 0s for Battle Destiny doesn't really happen in the modern game because a lot of cards, you are enabled to deploy your locations very quickly and easily. Drawing 0s isn't really fun. So I think it's a good thing that you don't draw 0 for Battle Destiny or for Destiny that often. He's going to move Darth Vader over to my location, which is going to decrease my activation a little bit because he occupies the site. My game text is canceled. He's going to use Wipe to activate, and I'm going to go down with the Bomar Monk. Now I can threaten a force drain of 2, but it's very possible he can just keep chasing me around and blocking my drain while getting his force drains in. I figure I'm going to try to attack here. Maybe I don't. So I have a starship. I have an X-Wing, probably the most basic starship in the game. I'm going to try to attack and kill the Womp Rat. I draw 3. And then on my turn, I can have all my characters attack the creature. The creature, I'd have to I don't know if you want to say outpower it. It draws a destiny, which is equal to the ferocity plus its defense value, which is scurry, which is 4. So basically 4 plus his destiny. If that's less than my power plus a battle destiny, or plus a destiny, since I have 4, it's not technically a battle destiny. The Womp Rat's defeated, which I think is what happens here. Because I think Scott draws low again. Yeah, he draws another 0. So I'd have a total of 7. He's got a total of 4. The Womp Rat was bullseyed. So that's good in that. Because on my turn 2, it would attack back. But I get first action. So now I'm just going to run away. So I guess my strategy in space is just to, deploy ships and squat there as opposed to run away. Because I don't want to allow him to drain me for 2 at Tatooine. Every force kind of matters in this format. So now I'm at 21 and 4, 25, 18. He's at 29. So he's up a little bit. And now he comes down with this is a TIE fighter that has a decent permanent pilot. Not your typical run-of-the-mill one, but it actually has a name, OS-72-1, from the Special Edition expansion. And he's going to draw a 3, which means I have to lose somebody because not all my ships are immune. None of my ships are actually immune to attrition. So, and immunity to attrition is one of the things I think that's hardest for new and returning players to get under control. But luckily, Jump does a lot of that enforcing. It kind of tells you. Like, see, I have this red text, which means I have to lose somebody from the location if it's red. If it's like yellow, I don't necessarily have to. I think it's how the colors work. It shows attrition and then battle damage. Yeah, so I had 2 battle damage. But when you forfeit cards, they can cover both of them. Or they do, unless their forfeit's 0, which happens sometimes. So now he moves Vader, blocks the drain. I don't have any control of any location, so I can't cause him any damage. My hand is pretty limited, and I just basically draw. So I just say, hey, I need to get some cards. It's a trap here, which means if he battles me and tries to, he could battle, draw a destiny to choke one of my guys, and that would be bad because it would instantly remove that character from battle. I kind of have, all right, I can use it to trap as like my gimme to kind of buy myself a turn, but I really need to draw some cards. So I did that. So I got a couple nouns up here with Dash Rendar and Spiral. He comes down with Dengar and Punishing One, which is a pretty good card for this format. He comes down with Rune Heiko, who has a cool game text that I always forget, that when he initiates battle, he gets to retrieve a card at same or adjacent site. That's helpful. Retrieval in this format. Retrieval in general is very good and strong. But in this format, even more so, because there's not a lot of ways that every player is used to or has access to. So I react with a Patrol Craft. I don't know why I do this. And then I don't play It's a Trap. I don't know why. I guess maybe I think it's better to save that. Because even if he chokes one of my guys, I'll still get a Battle Destiny and force him to lose a character. He goes to choke Hark, who can be really annoying. He misses by only drawing a 1. And now he's going to choose a number. And then he plays Unsalvageable, which is a Reflections 3 card. So I just reacted with this Patrol Craft just to have... I don't even know if it's applying its power. I don't think it is. Because my power is 4. 2 from Hark, 2 from Lando. So this is just an empty vehicle sitting here just for like 3 forfeit fodder. And he plays Unsalvageable, which says during your turn, target an opponent's unpiloted starship or an opponent's unpiloted vehicle. Target is lost. So that's pretty cool. So he instantly gets rid of my Patrol Craft, which now means I have to lose not only the Patrol Craft, but another card. And he draws a 0. So actually I don't, because a 0 means I have 0 attrition. Which means I don't have to lose anybody from the site. But he has more power than I do right now, so he could... But I draw 5. Wow. And he plays take them away to subtract 1. So we're going to have a tie here. We're both power 8. He needs to lose somebody, but I don't. So that was pretty good. That could have been worse. And now he battles at the system. I'm going to react with Spiral. So a react is another mechanic in this game that's pretty cool. Which basically means an opponent just initiates a battle or a force drain. You can move or deploy cards that say, hey, you can react. This says, may deploy -3 as a react. So he initiates battle. I respond with the react. I use the 2 force since the card has a deploy cost of 5, but it's -3 when it's deployed as a react, so I spend 2. He plays Sense, which is a card from Premiere, the first set. Cancel 1 interrupt or react by drawing Destiny less than ability of your highest character on table. If you have a Dark Jedi, it's very, 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 very likely that he's going to draw Destiny less than 6. and cancel my attempt to react. So he draws another 0. But now he has no cards in his reserve deck, which means he can't draw Battle Destiny, which means he can't force me really to lose anybody at the system, which is good for me. And I bet if he knew the 0 was there, I don't know. He probably didn't know the 0 was there. But actually, Dengar would add 1 to total Battle Destiny for each character starship present. So that means, worst case scenario, he would have had a total Battle Destiny of 2. So he would have had 2 plus whatever power he had. And if he allowed my react to go through, I would have had more power. So I had to lose 2 cards for the battle damage. And then he runs away, so I don't counter beat him. I'm going to play Big Boomas again, make him use 1 force, which has a niche purpose. I'm going to play Bish Shuffles. This is what I was talking about earlier about cycling cards. So I now have a Destiny 5 card that I can play for basically any reason. I could shuffle any player's reserve deck or use pile. Bish Shuffles is a pretty useful card in more limited formats. So now I know that 9 cards down, which I can activate 9, is a Destiny 5, which is good. Because if I want to kill Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, I need to draw 5 because he's immune to attrition less than 5. So I guess that's what my plan here is. Activate down, attack Vader, draw 5, kick him off the ground, and then I'm kind of ahead of the damage race then, because this is only a drain of 1, because it says if you control without a Star Destroyer, force drain -1. So even though I have 2 icons, he's only going to drain me for 1. So again, just to kind of take a step back and summarize again, a lot of this stuff is what does the card do? What does the card tell you? There's like these standards in place. Like the standard would be he force drains me for 2 at Mon Calamari. But there's the game text that says it's force drain -1. That makes it a good card for me, that I can activate 2, only give my opponent 1, and my liability for force drains coming back to me is only 1. So that's where cards like that are good. So now I'm going to come down with Spiral to try to attack Boba Fett. I'm going to deploy Dash Rendar, who's ability 3. Spiral has ability 2, so I can draw Battle Destiny. Remember, I have that 5 tracked. So I guess I go after the ship. I wonder why I did that. I think this might not have been the best line of play, because now I'm leaving myself vulnerable at the moisture farm. But I will kick him out of space here, because I can crack the immunity. It's immune less than 5 with Boba Fett piloting. Now Boba Fett will go away. But I need to lose my pilot, which means I kind of have this vulnerable Spiral here, which is power 5, forfeit 7, but it does not get a Battle Destiny. So now I will move Luminous over to help reinforce. So now I do have ability 4. I could draw Battle Destiny. If he comes down, puts a pilot on the ship. He deploys Watto. This is probably where the game ends, I think, because I think I overplayed my hand, where he comes down with Snuva, who's the dark side Wookiee. Yeah, this gets bad. So Snuva's got this game text of you can deploy from your reserve deck a Vibro Axe, which is a helpful tool for free. Vibro Axes usually cost 3 force, which is pretty expensive on an alien warrior. So Snuva's an alien, top left corner, warrior, bottom right, that's the blue icon. And he can capture instead of excluding. Normally the Vibro Axe excludes as opposed to hitting, which is a powerful mechanic to just take the character instantly out of the battle. Of course, we know, as I mentioned, Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith can instantly make a character lost. So I have 3 characters here, and it's very possible he eliminates 2 of them, and then vastly overpowers my 3rd one, which I'm pretty sure is how this game ends. So he goes to choke Hark. Successful, he draws a 4, Hark's defense value 2, he's instantly lost. I imagine he's going to attack the Bomar Monk, because Vibro Axe compares power. If your warrior's power, so Snuva's power 6 plus your destiny, greater than target's power and opponent's destiny. So my power is 0. Bomar Monks are interesting cards in that their power is 0, but ability 4. So it's basically impossible, even though he draws a 0. I think I need to... Oh, he adds 1? I wonder what adds 1. Maybe it's just destiny plus 1. Add 1 to power. Yeah, so his power is 7. I don't know. Whatever it is, he gets the Bomar Monk gone, and I captured or allowed to escape. He allows him to escape, so that's kind of the capturing mechanic. Either you can instantly seize and escort an opponent's character when you go to capture them, or you can let them escape, which sends them to their use pile, which kind of seems counterintuitive of like, hey, here's your card back. But by the a lot of times it's more valuable to have that card buried in your opponent's life force than to risk the captive being released. And the captive would be released if the other character, the escort, goes lost. So poor Lando here is down 16 force. He covers 6, but then I need to lose another 10. And I just concede. So that's 2 times I've had like 10 damage owed, and I'm just like, that's going to be good enough. Because yeah, then what did I start losing? I owed him 9 more, 3, 4, 5. I would have been down to 11. Whereas he's sitting there at 23, so he's got more than double my life force. And he's threatening a drain of 2 at the moisture farm, and I'm draining for 1 and 1 in space. So we'd be equal damage, but he's up severely. He's got a couple more cards in hand, so he has some more possibilities of what to do. The board state favors him, so I can see. So this is interesting. So I went 6 and 2 in this league, or this event, and I lost my first 2 games. So then I won my next 6, I guess. So here's the third one. Maybe we'll do 4. Because what happens in all of the Jedi, halfway through the league, you get more packs, so you can kind of make some tweaks to your decks. You can add some new cards. So I'm playing against Greg Shaw here. Good guy I've known a long time. 2-time World's runner-up. Many top 8 appearances for him. Couple major victories as well. I'm now dark side. So I played my first 2 games as light. Now I get to go first. I play this Imperial Rest Order Secret Plans, which is a helpful mechanic that I can deploy Docking Bay, which again, the idea is you want to get locations out as early as possible to get your activation. So then you can do stuff, because every card to do stuff requires resources. So I'm going to make a somewhat aggressive play here by just deploying Colonel Wolf Yularen, who's only power 1, but forfeit 6, he's 5, but Imperial Rest Order adds 1. Imperials have ability less than 3 or forfeit plus 1. But the cool thing with this location is instead of 4, total ability of 6 or more required to draw Battle Destiny here. So I'm basically saying he's got 7 force active. What are the odds that he has the ability to throw down 2 characters, initiate battle, and then also get through my projective telepathy here, which is kind of the key, where if the opponent initiates battle or force drain, they must use 2 more force or the battle's canceled. So I think that's what happens here, is he says, oh wow, maybe Jared has an Imperial Barrier as a evasion or a protection for Wolf. But he doesn't want to let me get a force drain of 2 in, because this is force drain plus 1. And he comes down with Lieutenant Chamberlain, who's power 4, ability 5, but deploy 3, and he kind of falls right into my trap, so to speak, of Captain Varrock. So he's got 2 characters that are power 6. He draws Battle Destiny. I just have Wolf, who doesn't get Battle Destiny, covers 6. So if he gets this battle through, I'm likely to see some battle damage. This is actually a really good game. This game came down to 1 card. So I play Projected Telepathy. He only has 1 force left after spending the 1 to initiate battle. So the battle has to be canceled. He can't possibly use that additional 2 force. And now he spent his entire first turn. Well, he got some more activation, but spent his turn trying to attack me. And now I'm going to attack him back, because the other thing is either he forgot the text or he figured it wouldn't be relevant because he would just overpower me. But he doesn't have ability 6. So that means his power won't be increased by Battle Destiny. And it also means I don't have to account for the fact that he's going to draw Destiny and I have to lose somebody, which would then expose me to a counter beat. So I could have put Thrawn down as well for another 4 force, since that's his deploy. But I need to replenish my hand. My hand's getting too small. So if your hand gets really small, you kind of signaling to your opponent, I can only do so many things, and that allows him to play a little more aggressively. So I draw 3 for Battle Destiny, which means he's going to have to lose one of these characters. He loses Captain Varrock, and he's definitely going to run away. Or I shouldn't say that. He's going to activate 11 force. There's a chance he can reinforce and try to fight me, which I think is actually what he does. So I like Scott did, I wiped him out, so I get to activate a card on my opponent's turn because I activated Battery on Sight. He throws down a dude, Wire Usurper, and he's going to run away, and he's going to replenish his hand. And he's got this pretty helpful card, which was really big in this matchup, Bargaining Table, which allows him to cancel a force drain each turn by placing a non-unique alien from his hand. So, of course, Greg's a really good player, and he kind of saw an opportunity of, hey, I have Bargaining Table, and I can play a bunch of non-unique aliens, and that can really hinder my opponent's ability to force damage. So he's going to put an Alderaan operative on Bargaining Table, And it's not like a wasted card because then later in the game he can deploy that card to the table. So I'm going to put Colonel David John, who's a pretty good character. Power +2 at an exterior planet site, immune less than 3, and draws 1 Battle Destiny if unable to otherwise. So even though he's only ability 2, he gets Battle Destiny. This is an exterior planet site, which those 2 icons are. This is maybe the best site in the game for Darkside, one of like the top 3. So I'm just going to do that to threaten 2 more damage, 2 more damage. I have this card, which I just drew. I love this card. During a battle at a site, use 3 force to cancel 1 Battle Destiny just drawn. That's a really powerful mechanic in this game when you're kind of always banking or expecting to draw a Battle Destiny to try to wear down your opponent's forces at that location. So if your opponent doesn't anticipate it, which why would they? It's not a really common card. It can really help out. So he deploys a Bowcaster on Lieutenant Chamberlain, who's a warrior. This card says to use X force to deploy on your warrior, which is 7 minus the warrior's power. So he costs him 3 to deploy it, and now he's going to try to contest me here because he knows he can't just let me keep draining for 2. So he's going to, at both sites. And he's going to draw some cards. So I'm going to force drain for 2 since I control the 3rd marker. He doesn't care. He's got another operative, which he just cancels. So that's getting frustrating to me. I have Rashal Hist, I think the name is. It's a good character. If he has a, for this format, if you have a weapon, force drain +1. Anytime you get a force drain of 2 or 3, let alone 3, in this type of format, that's a really good thing. I don't know why I put Thrawn there. Maybe just to kind of threaten another drain of 2. Again, this format you kind of play aggressive a lot. So he's going to fire the Bowcaster. He's going to hit, which again means that I have to forfeit this card, but it still has 3 forfeits. So if he draws a 3, I can just lose that card and that's it. He draws, or I draw a 1. This destructive conflict would actually allow me to cancel my own destiny, but he'd probably never want to do that. And he only draws a 1, so that's favorable to me. I'm not going to cancel it because I have to lose somebody anyway. I'd rather save it for a future battle. So this is a good location for me because he needs ability 6 to draw Battle Destiny. Even if he wins the site, he only drains me for 1 there, whereas I drain for 2. Oh, that's why I put Thrawn there, because now I moved him over to Obi-Wan's hut, and this is a force drain +1. So I'm threatening a drain of 3 here, which is big. So he kind of has to respond to that. He can't afford to take that big of a drain. Definitely not for more than 1 turn. He's going to play Control Tunnel Vision and take a card into hand. That could also cancel a force drain, so I think he must have really looked for a card. And he's going to play Sorry About the Mess, which allows him to fire a weapon during his control phase. And he's going to try to take out my Gamorrean, Ghana Gleamort. And I think that hits. He draws a 2. I think it's +1. So Ghana goes lost. So now Greg again's probably like, this is good. I'm going to beat him down at the Jonlin Waste. At least make him lose the character because he owes me 4 force. He deploys a Jawa, Het Nick, and Obi-Wan, who's deploy -3. To Obi-Wan's hut, he's normally 7. He's deploy -2, and then he deploys Scramble, which is a really strong card in this older format. There's a shield for it in open. It prevents me from using all pilots except for Vader. Can't use their ability to draw Battle Destiny. So now I'm not going to get a Battle Destiny at Obi-Wan's hut. I played this card, which I don't think this is a really good card. So Greg allows me to retrieve 3 force rather than activate force. I think he might have joked that he shouldn't have done that. Because the card basically says you choose whether to activate some force and your opponent activates less, or your opponent chooses to let you retrieve force and they can retrieve a little less. So he only draws a 0, which means I don't need to take any overflow. I don't need to use my, or I guess I couldn't even have done that. I couldn't have canceled his Battle Destiny. So long story short, Wolf covers the damage. I don't take any overflow, which is pretty fortunate for me. He then draws that 1 again for Leia. And Thrawn dies, which also results in this getting canceled, which is pretty helpful because effect cancel when opponent has no pilots at sites. So now I have no pilots at sites versus systems, just like Fondor's a system. I picked this because I have the Executor, which is deploy -5 there. Really expensive card. At this point, I think I probably realized that I can't deploy this card because it says deploys only on Coruscant or to Emperor's Site. So I don't have the Emperor in this deck. It's a pretty rare card. And there's no Coruscant site, so he's just completely useless. So I think I took him out of my deck. After the fact, I'm going to deploy Corporal Averick just so I still can't get Battle Destiny, but at least I have some forfeit. He's going to be forfeit 4 because of the bonus. So if he comes and attacks me, hopefully I could just lose the card. But I just constantly want to keep trying to force damage. We're both at 18 force face down. I got 5 more cards in hand. He's going to drain me for 1. And I'm threatening 3 damage. I lose Min. He deploys a Talls to the docking bay. I could speed up this speed. So he then deploys a couple cards off the bargaining table. Moves Obi-Wan over. And now he's threatening a drains of 1, 1, 1. And I'm threatening drains of 2 and 1. So we're even. But it's going to be close. I take that back. It's not going to be close because he's got bargaining table, and apparently it could be worse. So I play Tentacle, which grabs the card and prevents him from putting that card in his use pile, potentially getting it back again to play against me later in the game. And I drain that Fondor. I play Allegations of Corruption, which is an effect that allows me to grab used interrupts to make sure they don't get cycled. Kashik's a good card. I'm speeding this up because Kashik is a force drain +1. I'd rather keep trying to get drains of 2 and 2 through. Salacious Crumb as another character. And then I get a couple of my favorite cards in Projective Telepathy back again, and Voyeur, which is a direct damage card. If I know he has a certain interrupt in his use pile, I can name it, play it, make him lose a card. So we're both at 13. I'm up a couple force, but now he's going to put some damage through on his turn. And I'm going to hold the Projective Telepathy because you don't want to play it where it doesn't really make a difference. This is a card I like to play when it actually is like the deal breaker and prevents him from being able to battle because he doesn't have the force. If your opponent could play around it, it changes things. So he's now going to just put characters in front of my location. Just a bunch of scrubs to block my drain of 2. A lot of forfeit to kind of weather any attack I might drum up. I'm going to drain him for 2. He's going to cancel it again. I finally get a drain through. That's awesome. He loses a couple cards from hand. I deploy this landing craft thingy, which only costs a force, drain of 1. I'm kind of hoping he doesn't. Again, I'm taking a risk here that he doesn't have starships because I'm really vulnerable up in space. I'm going to play Sebulba, use Sebulba's text to make power -2, -3. I'm just trying to overpower him, make him lose cards. And plus I have this end destructive conflict to make sure his destiny gets canceled, which is what I think I do here. No, I don't. I guess because it's low, I figure let me just lose Crumb. I'd rather save it in case he draws like a 5 or a 6, let alone. And that would really be more backbreaking. So I don't play Voyeur because I don't know any interrupts in his use pile. I want to play that when I know there's a card in there. He's going to get some drains through. At this point, I think we traded. Let me speed this up. We just basically are trading damage. And he's just trying to stall me at the defensive perimeter because he has Yoxkit, who can retrieve cards. And he has a way to cancel my Kashik drain if he gets some more non-unique characters. So he just deploys character. And he plays Sabak, which is pretty fun. Basically Blackjack and Star Wars CCG. He wins because I only have 11. I only have 2 cards in my reserve. That's the most I can play. A lot happening here, actually. So because he won Sabak, I don't think I had any of the stakes in my hand. So he just gets to choose 1 card to be lost. One device or droid without armor. It's like a game within a game. I know he has that card in his use pile. I play Voyeur to make him lose a card. Greg says you would, because that's a card that I'm kind of known for playing a lot. Now he's losing a couple cards. I'm just, again, in this mode of like, I need to try to kick him off this defensive perimeter. And I'm trying to overpower him here. He draws a 2 again. I'm like, all right, 2. Actually, I'm going to have the force to cancel it anyway. But I'm just trying to work him down there. And right now I'm up, we're basically even in life force. And he's going to use Yoxkit's text. So that's pretty helpful that he can keep recurring cards. He comes down with a Wookiee Senator, Yaru, who because see, this is like the type of stuff that comes up that this game is like awesome and also really difficult. If you control, which I control because I have characters here and he doesn't, all Wookiees on table are forfeit -3. So he just deployed this Wookiee Senator who's normally forfeit 4, but it doesn't show it here because it would show if the game was live. But that character's forfeit 1, which is like nothing. That means he can't soak up any damage. Wow, he had Han Chewie Falcon that he loses. That's a really powerful card. So I'm going to so now I got to make some tough decisions of like, he gets a Battle Destiny here, but he only has so many force left. He's got 0 cards in hand. I figure worst case scenario, he battles me and I just lose the card. But he also might battle me. I can cancel his Battle Destiny and then he has to lose 2 force. So I'm losing some cards. He's going to get a card back with the Ox Git. Wonder when I actually use. So now I use it. So he draws a 3. And I'm going to draw 4, which is pretty big because that makes him basically, I think he needs to lose Carrie or Lando or the Wookiee and the Operative. So he just loses Carrie. And now he doesn't have the 4. Or even if he did battle me at the docking bay, I'd play Projective and then he couldn't get the battle through. So now when there's very few little life force left, he's got to really, we both have to debate exactly how we're going to use our force. He's at 5, I'm at 4, we each have a card in hand. I'm holding this Projective Telepathy because at some point I want it to be the difference of what he can do. So I'm using Sebulba's text, reducing power. I'm going to draw this 5. And I figure I could just lose Sebulba, who covers 5 even if he draws high. So that's what I'll do here. But now he has to lose Lando because neither of the other characters cover 5 attrition. And now he doesn't get a Battle Destiny. So he's 1 and 2, which means Colonel David John can kind of just survive for himself right now. And so now he's, with his turn 10, drains me for a few. I'm making some very careful decisions of what I'm losing, where I'm losing it from. And now he goes to battle me. But I play Projective Telepathy, which would require him to use 2 more force or the battle's canceled. He does not have the force to do it. Battle's canceled, buys me another turn. I can now drain, and I'm going to track that Projective around. So I know exactly where that Projective Telepathy card is. So I'm going to draw it again, which I just did. And I'm just going to draw 1 more just so I got to lose 2 to force drain anyway. So he's going to drain me for 1. I think I'm going to lose the Executor. And now I play this, which means he either has to pay 2 more to drain me for 1, in which case I just lose the card and I still have 1 left. Or he cancels the drain, uses Yoxgit to get a card back, which would then get him up to 4, but he can't battle me anywhere. So yeah, it gets really about economics. So I lose Shocking. My last card left is Projective Telepathy. He says go. It's because he did use the 2 force, and then I guess he drew a card. Yeah, he drew 1 card. So now I'm at 1, he's at 2. He has 1 card in hand. I'm going to drain him for 3, and I win the game. Because he got the drain through, but then he couldn't get the Yox. Why didn't he just... I don't know why. If he cancels the drain, gets Yoxgit, he has 4 cards, which means he could survive another turn. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here. But yes, I won by 1, so that was a fun game. But yeah, I think he should have declined the drain, and then I have 2 force left, but then he could use Yoxgit to get 1 back. He's got 4, I've got 2. I drain him for 3. He has 1 card left. I don't know what else he was. I guess there's a small... No, I couldn't overflow him at the 3rd marker. Whatever. Good game. So I won by 1. All right, let's do this one final one in the Series 1, and then we'll do these others later, because this is getting an hour, 5 minutes. This was my 4th game. I play against Scott again. I did my same start. Got a bunch of characters. Darth Vader with lightsaber is a pretty strong card. Use my once per game. Again, similar process, getting locations out, trying to force damage, putting nouns down. I guess I won't, I'll try to avoid repeating myself, but he's only activating 5. It's really hard for him to pose a threat to my couple starships here with only 5 force active. He deploys Obi-Wan. This is kind of a cool sight because if he controls, he can spend 2 force to retrieve 1 force. So that's a powerful mechanic to just keep getting force back. So I can keep draining, he can keep retrieving, but he's spending 2 force to do so. I'm going to go to the third marker, a couple characters, put a blaster on my guy here, Rashalt, who adds 1 to force drains. This is now a drain of 3, which if you're playing the game and you shift click, it'll say force drain amount. It gives you more information. So right now, again, very, very early in the game, but I'm threatening 4 damage. He's threatening 1 and retrieve 1. He deploys Hark Seth. He deploys Bargaining Table. So a couple ways, again, just like Greg in the previous game, would be able to cancel my drains. He realizes, and I didn't realize this initially, he's got to be at a battleground site in order to reduce the force loss. And this is not a battleground because I don't have an icon. Battlegrounds are defined in the rulebook. Both characters have to be able to deploy. Both characters have to get icons. And I think maybe initiate battle. There's 3 stipulations, or maybe even just 2. The definition changed a little bit, but most people, there's a couple that are not intuitive, but most locations are pretty straightforward in whether they are or not. So I draw a few cards. He comes down with Chancellor Valorum and Han Solo, moves Hark over. Again, he knows he has to block that drain, because I guess maybe he doesn't have a non-unique alien to just cancel the drain with Bargaining Table and buy him some time. He loses Chewie Enraged. I come down with Vader. Again, this location is awesome. It adds 1 to each of my weapon destinies, and in a deck that usually doesn't have high destinies, that's very helpful for me to increase the chance that I actually hit somebody. So, fire with gun, I hit, it's +1. Hark Seth is gone. I'm going to fire at Han with Vader. That's a 3, becomes a 4. Han Solo is going to be hit, 0 becomes a 1. At any other location, I would miss. Because I wouldn't have enough destiny to get through Han's ability 3 defense value. He draws a 3, I draw a 3. He is going to be able to just lose Hark, and then he owes me 4 more in battle damage, so he just loses Valorum. So he tried to block it. I fought him off. I had to lose somebody, Averick. And the trajectory favors me right now, just because I have this big drain, unless he can find a way to stop it. So he draws up a bunch, plays Blue Milk, good card. And I play Voyeur because I know that Interrupt is in his use pile. I name it, I make him lose a card. I think he said you would as well. He plays 6/6, which is a non-unique alien to cancel my drain, so that buys him some time. Deploy my Grabber, which can grab a used Interrupt by spending a force. Deploy Ghana here with Captain B-Will, so I can get enough ability to draw Battle Destiny. And Scott's going to do the thing where he pays 2 to retrieve. 6/6 comes out. I think he reduces forfeit of all pilots, but neither of my characters are pilots. Comes down with Figure and Dan. Passes the turn because he doesn't want to battle, lose a guy, and then open himself up to a beat. He's got another non-unique to cancel my drain with the Baragwin. I'm going to put out Endor, which is a force drain 2, as opposed to Fondor, which is only 1. His name is Anakin. It's a pretty cool card for this format. It makes all aliens deploy, makes them expensive to deploy to Tatooine. And there's a lot of Tatooine locations in this format, and there are a bunch of aliens too, because people don't have a huge selection or opportunity for cards. It's a little more limited, a little more reasonable. So I'm going to move Sebulba over here. I'm going to spread really thin to just try to force as much damage. I have, so now I'm like, all right, I can drain for 1 at the docking bay, 3 at the defensive perimeter, 1 at Fondor, 2 at Endor. That's a lot of damage for a turn, and that would really set him back. If I can get two turns worth of that much damage through, the game is basically over. So he's going to make a wager with Figure and Deanne to try to retrieve a force. That's again just what his game tech says he can do. And I'll put all the game links in the YouTube video, so people can watch and go at their own pace and kind of click on certain cards and kind of understand why certain things happen. You can follow along the text in here, which explains a lot. It's really helpful. Another cool thing about Jamp, even on the replay, you as you can see, like anything I can do at any time, if it's possible for me to do it, the card lights up and it's like, okay, do you want to do this? You can click on it, you can play it. So all the options available to you at any time are like presented, like, hey, do you want to do this or not? So it's really helpful for beginners. It also makes sure that people don't do illegal stuff that the rules for some reason or another don't allow them to do. I'm going to play Voyeur because I knew some other card was there, I guess. Make him lose another direct damage for 1. He's going to drain me for 1, retrieve 1. And I think, let me pause it right now. So right now the math, I have 14 cards face down. He has 18. I have 2 more in hand, so that means he's up 2, but I have better board state. I'm threatening a lot more damage, and even though he's retrieving 1, he's only draining me for 1. So I'm going to let him draw. I'm going to cancel it so I don't have to lose anybody. Again, I really like this End is Destructive Conflict card. And I draw 3, so now I'm power 10. He's got to give me 10, or he owes me 5 force and battle damage and 3 in attrition. So he just loses 2 characters instead of 1 character and peeling cards. He's going to play Use Interrupt, which I grab. So this is where it's kind of like, in chess, you trade a card for a card. So I deploy this card on the table. I can use 1 force to grab an interrupt. So he plays the card thinking he's going to play this Used Interrupt and just cycle it back into his deck. And I take it out of the equation. So it's, especially in my position here, so I have board state in my favor. I just want to just keep weeding out cards from his life force. I'm going to have this big drain of 3 at the defensive perimeter, which he doesn't have a non-unique alien to cancel. 2 at Endor. He loses control, which would be helpful because that cancels a force drain. It's basically you're losing 1 card instead of 3. I take a look at my reserve deck to just see what the destiny's like. Always helpful to kind of know. I deploy Lieutenant Helmsley just to make sure he doesn't have like a character. I forget that this text exists where if opponent initiates battle, Obi-Wan, you can if opponent just initiated a battle at a related Tatooine site, may use 2 force to relocate Obi-Wan to that site. It doesn't have to be the 1 site over, I don't think. Or maybe that's a good question. I don't know if it's 3 sites away, can you do it? Because it's a relocation, it's not a move. I don't think relocation requires land speed or looks to land speed because characters have land speed of 1. So I draw the 0, which is bad. So this backfired. But I'm not going to take overflow. He draws a 0 as well. So neither of us have to lose anybody. And I get him off of this site that is enabling him to retrieve a card. So I draw the Executor, but I'd have to deploy it to Fondor. Deploy -5 here, Executor. And I only have 10 cards down. It's deploy 15. So I can spend my entire turn trying to deploy that card. And then I play, so this is like Scott's is known for this card. I just assume Kiss a Wookiee. He loves this card and the light side equivalent. It can wait. So use 3 force to place an opponent's just deploy character, starship, vehicle, weapon, or device in opponent's hand. On an opponent's next turn, that card may deploy for free anywhere. So it's good in something like this where he leads with 1 character. I say, okay, fine. He comes with the 2nd character, and I'm going to make him put it back to his hand. So now if that 1 other card is not another character, Valorum is kind of hung out to dry. And I forgot that Valorum is ability 4. If he was, I probably would have just played Kiss a Wookiee first. From Hoth, he draws a 5. So I'm getting a little sloppy here, but I still think I'm in a decent enough position. This drain of 3 at the defensive perimeter is a huge problem for him because that's big. He plays, he battles me back at Mos Espa. This time I don't think we're both going to draw 0s. He draws a 4, I draw a 0. B-Will covers 5 since he's 4 plus 1 from Imperial Rest Order and Secret Plans, my starting effect. He's going to move over to block. I think he kind of has to. I'm thinking to myself, maybe he has a Hujix in his hand, which would cancel all remaining damage. It's kind of like the Mulligan card. Or it's just a total desperation move that he's just hoping to get lucky with some Destiny, block the drain, not take much overflow. So I'm going to get drain of, well, he cancels my drain of 2. So this is still pretty close. I'm coming down with Salacious Crumb. And I Captain P it for some more power. Basically just trying to overflow him enough to just win the game instantly. His only out would be Hujix, which is an interrupt you can play to get rid of all remaining battle damage after you've lost everybody at the site. I swing. These Destinies are +1 because of the defensive perimeter 3rd marker's game text. Valorum is hit, forfeits 0 because that's what Vader's lightsaber does. And I draw a 2 for Battle Destiny. He's going to draw a 4, which means he owes me 7 force and battle damage. He does have the Hujix. So he cancels it all. So now, as I wrap up my 8th turn, I run away with Ghana. And I move Rashalt back over here. I think I probably checked. He adds 1 to force drains, even if they're not battlegrounds. So this is a drain of 2, 2, 1, 1, 2 that I'm threatening. And he has no cards in his hand. So he deploys somebody off the website. He's just gonna suicide the Baragwin. I think, yeah, this is not an optimal play. It's just for fun here. So he's gonna battle me, and he's gonna take a bunch of overflow, and I'm gonna win the game here. And that will put me to 2-2 for the Series 1, which is the first set of games. So again, I'm talking through a lot of stuff. I apologize if a lot of it's fast. He loses a bunch of cards. He's only got 3 left. But hopefully this kind of fills you in kind of thought processes and kind of reasoning and rationale and kind of approach with a more limited card pool. General how games go. You put locations out. You're trying to balance I want to force damage by putting nouns, characters and starships to sites and systems respectively. Balance that with keeping your hand at a healthy size, so you kind of always have next options. Think of it at the extremes. If you have 0 cards in hand, your opponent is going to be like, well, you can't respond to anything I do on my turn. You need to then go through your whole turn before you draw cards and replenish and then pose a threat to me again. So if you have 2 cards in your hand, your opponent might be like, well, maybe he's got some characters, but I'm going to take some risks and just bet that those aren't characters or those aren't starships. I'm going to bet that those are interrupts that aren't really threatening to me right now. So that's, again, the approach. Locations, building the deck is like a whole nother thing, which I kind of get into in the first episode. But that's a skill that just comes with more and more time. Fortunately, in the community, there's a lot of resources for decks. Maybe not in this format because this is sealed, which is very specific to every event, can change a lot. But there's open constructed decks. There's decks available for alternative and retro formats. So that's what I always recommend people coming back. Net deck is the term. You just go load up a deck, play it a bunch, get used to it, figure out what's good, what's bad, what cards are kind of working for you, which ones you think you want to substitute in. And as you just kind of know what cards do, but there's so many cards and there's so much knowledge accrued over the years that's where it's usually better if you're a new player and you want to play an open format, or really any format, to kind of just defer to, okay, this card's played a lot. It's probably played for a reason. It probably does good things. It's versatile. It's strong. It's accessible. All these different things that make cards more likely to be played than others. So again, this is 4 games, all the Jedi format. And yeah, so we had some force drains, we had some direct damage, we had a lot of battles, we had some drawing destiny, we had some weapons, whole bunch of fun stuff. So I'll wrap it up here. This is coming up on 1 hour 20. I'll post this to the YouTube channel. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to post in the video, things you'd like to see, if you had questions why I did certain things. And again, I will include these game link replay URLs so that people can watch them and digest them a little more moderate pace. But thanks for tuning in. A couple of you jumped in live, it looked like. Thanks for hanging out. And if you watch this, thank you. And hopefully see you around on Jump and in real life events. All right, thanks. Bye.